Welcome back to my channel, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Shweta. I'm the founder of Healthy Dynamics, who's a coaching practice that helps healthcare professionals from non-English speaking backgrounds become better, more empathetic, and impactful communicators. Now, this is a familiar face. You've seen her not too long ago, a couple of months ago. And the plan for me originally was to have another guest, but that just didn't work out. But keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about on my YouTube and LinkedIn, I felt she is someone who is obviously has been on here before, sharing her expertise on a different area, but this is an area that she's working quite significantly in at the moment. And I thought, well, let's just have her on again and get her insights into what it's all about. So, Susan, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you again. Now, last time I gave a very proper introduction of yourself. Now, if you don't mind just telling everyone in just a couple of sentences, what sort of work do you do and what do you specialize in?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a therapeutic coach and I help predominantly women, but I have had clients as well to recover from chronic conditions like ME, CFS, and
Mm-hmm.
fibromyalgia, and also anxiety. And a big part of that work, because it's about tackling the root cause, a big part of that work is boundaries. So that's
Okay,
why.
beautiful. That is exactly what we're going to talk about in today's segment, which is going to be all about boundaries. And a lot of my videos for this month and a lot of the material that I'm covering this month everywhere on my social medias is very much about boundaries. And I think it ties in very well because now it's the holiday season. And people, this time of the year in particular, people really struggle with boundaries. But I just thought we'll have a little discussion and get your perspective on let's just kick it off now.
Yeah.
So, how would you define boundaries? It's a very fluid, it's a very subjective concept, but what's your definition of what boundaries are and what they aren't?
Sure. So the way I see boundaries, it's basically people being the truest version of themselves that they can be
Mm-hmm.
and showing up as that. So showing up as the truest version of themselves and basically communicating who they are, and what is okay with them and what isn't okay with them, either verbally or energetically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the more you do it and the more confident you are in yourself, the
Mm-hmm.
more that is an energetic thing. You show up and people kind of we all know people that just don't take any shit from anybody else, and it's not
And
necessarily
that's you
about
and I.
yeah, it's not necessarily about what they say or that they say that they don't take any shit or anything like that, but it's mainly an energetic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's how I try and define them, and they're about the person rather than about anybody else. What are they not? Um, they're not a lot of things that people think they are. So they're not polite requests for somebody
Mm-hmm.
to adapt their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But they also, in my book, aren't rules for anyone else to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not a way of trying to control or manipulate the behavior of other people. Um, what I believe is that they are simply you allowing what feels okay to you and disallowing what doesn't feel okay to you. Um, Communicating that, but in a way that goes, well, no, if you're not going to respect what's not okay with me, then I'm going to disengage with this in some sort of way. Um, so if people aren't respecting, continually not respecting your boundaries, then they may not be allowed to continue in your life in some sort of way or at all. So there's some sort of consequence there, some sort of disengagement that goes, I'm just not available for that behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good, and I think you clarified the misunderstandings that people tend to have about what boundaries are and how they shouldn't be misused and are often misused by in the as a tool of manipulation. I never thought of it that way, so thank you for bringing that up. Now, you're doing a lot of work in your therapy practice around boundaries. So I'm just curious, have boundaries been a challenge for you personally in the past or present, professionally or personally? And how have you navigated through that?
Oh, I've had boundary challenges throughout my life in every aspect of it, in every area of it. So all of my personal relationships, in jobs, and also with clients. The even they even continue with clients because we develop and we change. So like I was saying, we show up as we hope to show up as the truest version of ourselves, but we're
Mm-hmm.
always learning who we are. We're always learning what we will and won't put up with. That's our emotional guidance system telling us that. So it's a learning process. We're not born with one set of boundaries that are rigid and we stick with them throughout life. They can change and they can adapt, which is important to know as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay for something to, or for you to realize that something isn't okay with you and then make adjustments here and there. But yeah, I used to put up with a lot of unfair treatment in my life before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I say, in pretty much every area of it because I didn't have that confidence myself. I didn't know who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would go along with what others wanted, or I wouldn't have that confidence to to say no to certain things or to say yes to myself more. You don't know who you are. It's very difficult to do that. So it wasn't until I was nearly 30 and I started actually respecting and valuing myself, and and therefore kind of putting up with less of the stuff that wasn't okay with me.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't mind sharing an example of, because this is something that my followers on LinkedIn have, the conversations that I've been having with them, this is a sort of a recurrent theme that's coming up all the time.
Mhm.
So basically, they don't have like they don't even understand what their boundaries are, and if they do, they just don't know how to enforce it. Now, as someone who is in the therapy space, can you give me an example of a common boundary that you experience with your clients, when if they're aware of it, but they still sort of push it, or otherwise? So how can you give me a couple of examples of yeah, what sort of boundaries you have with your clients, and in instances where those boundaries are crossed, what do you do?
Yeah. Um, so within my practice, what I do with clients is I encourage them to email me between sessions if they are really stuck with something.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can kind of very quickly give them an answer and get them unstuck and move on between sessions, that's what I like to do so that they don't have to
Mm-hmm.
wait till the next session. So this is communicated, and that normally happens. It's normally a very quick kind of response, and it can get them unstuck and moving on. Sometimes it's not, and sometimes I have clients pushing that boundary, and that is within my client therapist agreement, so they know it from the outset. It's talked about from the
Mm-hmm.
outset as well,
Mm-hmm.
and also the boundaries around that are I'm not going to respond straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have the capacity to respond straight away. I'll
Sure.
tend to respond within 24 hours,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's the weekend, because I don't coach at the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these kind of boundaries in place. They're in writing, they're set out, and they're also discussed verbally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you do get people pushing them, and whether they are conscious of it or not, I'm not sure, because they're struggling and they want help. So um, I've had clients messaging me at the weekend and going, "This is happening tomorrow. Have you got any advice?" Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
had clients, yeah, I'll give them an answer and then there'll be like follow-up questions and follow-up questions, and it's like this isn't this isn't a quick thing. This is going to need another
Mhm.
session.
Yes.
And even people who have kind of finished with sessions and are like, they're trying not to book more sessions, but they kind of need them. And
Mhm.
they'll send me a big long email, go, can you, any help with this sort of thing. So I have to just reinforce the boundaries that are in there and let them know that, I can't respond. I can't. This isn't something that I can respond to at the weekend, um, or this isn't something that's going to be answered sufficiently back and forth via email, so it's going to have to wait until your next session. Or this isn't something that I can answer by email. You will need to book a session if you want my help with this. Um, and it is, I think it is important to know that boundaries aren't a one-time thing. You don't set them out and then expect people to to know and comply and all of that. But I do have like almost like a kind of three-time rule. So if I've got a clear boundary set, then I know that I can very clearly and succinctly repeat that boundary.
Mhm.
It's a one sentence thing, and people are reminded, oh, okay. Um, but and with clients, that's all it takes. I've never had to reinforce that more than that. But um, you can expect people to push boundaries, but be prepared for it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Have them clear at the beginning, and then have a very succinct kind of um, almost like a stock response if somebody's trying to push it. No,
Sure.
you know this, and
Mm.
leave it at that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the issues that I've come across with the conversations that I've been having with my new followers is that very similar to yours. So they'll get phone calls just when people are out of hours, and just several others. People just walk in without making an appointment and things like that. So that's just a more common thing.
Yeah.
Um, Now, let's talk about your client specifically. Now, this is something that you are devising a course about. We'll get into that shortly. But when you work with your clients, what are some common reasons they have trouble setting boundaries? Is it usually a lack of awareness or just don't know how to do that?
It's everything. There are so many reasons or so many aspects to this, um, and that's why it feels so difficult for a lot of people. Um, Firstly, we're not taught to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We are we're conditioned to live in a way that doesn't really suit us, to just conform.
Yes,
do
absolutely.
do all of this stuff, and if you want to do something different, that's not okay, or we're going to make like life difficult for you. So um yeah, we're not taught that it's okay to just be us and to set boundaries around that. There are also a lot of people out there who mistreat other people, whether it's unfair treatment or to the extent of abuse. And
Mm-hmm.
that can quite often obviously happen early on in life. So if that
Mm-hmm.
happens earlier in life, particularly, or in a situation where somebody physically hasn't been able to set a boundary or to stop that abuse, whatever level it's at, um, they then learn that it's something that they deserve, and that pattern of allowing unfair treatment can develop. Um, but even when people become aware of, oh, that wasn't okay, and actually I deserve better, and I need to start setting boundaries, even when all of this awareness comes into play and they go, right, I need to start doing this, it can feel difficult because people are scared of confrontation. They're scared of having these conversations. They're scared of consequences. They're scared of rejection from people and of losing people. So um, even when the awareness and the knowledge is there that something needs to change, fear is probably the biggest reason that people find it difficult.
Mhm. And yeah, a lot of my videos actually discuss, why healthcare professionals in general have trouble setting boundaries. I've like a couple of videos this month do look into that, and this is exactly even what I've mentioned. So
Hmm.
I'm glad that whatever I'm saying is making sense. Now you are going to, or you probably have devised this course about how to set and implement boundaries. Can you just walk us through the process that you follow in terms of when you coach using your therapeutic modules, how you coach your clients to become aware of and set and implement these boundaries consistently?
Yeah, sure. So, well, with um with my clients, the part of the process that I take them through is tuning into their emotional guidance system and what's happening in their lives currently, but what's happened in the past that's created these patterns that are still playing out in the day to day. So um, I help them to see what emotional issues are occurring,
Mm-hmm.
what feels unfair to them, and that kind of raises their awareness of the boundary issues. A lot of people are very aware of past unfair treatment. They're less aware sometimes of current unfair treatment and how things are still playing out. Sometimes not. Sometimes they're completely aware, but they just don't know how to change anything or to implement any of this. Um, so I part of my coaching is to talk them through the kinds of things that we're talking about today, explaining what boundaries are, what they aren't, um, when when it's okay to set boundaries, and in terms of how to do it, is there's a lot around effective communication.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that the focus is on themselves and not the other person, because it's not about finger pointing and blaming. It's about taking responsibility and going, but this is how this feels to me. So there's a lot around language and how to actually say things. So you can
Mm-hmm.
say basically the same thing to somebody that you've been saying for 20 years. If you change how you say it, suddenly they might hear it in a different way or hear it at all. Um, in my framework as well, I've got a specific framework around boundaries. It's basically the 5 pillars of effective boundary setting. So
Mm-hmm.
within that, we've got responsibility. So what I've just said, taking responsibility for your own boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that it's up to you to disallow unfair treatment. It's not up to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Timing, because timing is very important around boundaries. You don't do it within the kind of within a certain time frame. They kind of mean nothing. It's almost like, if you've got a dog and he does something bad and then you kind of try and give him into trouble 3 days later or even 10 minutes later, he's not going to
Remember it, yeah.
not going to know why you're giving him into trouble, so it's pointless. We're quite like that as humans.
Mm-hmm.
Stability. So being firm in your boundaries, making sure that they can't just be easily pushed over. Communication, as we talked about, being effective in that, keeping language in a certain respect that has the focus on you rather than on somebody else, and also not saying too much, not doing over explaining and all of that. So keeping it succinct, um, because the less we say to people, the less we give them in terms of reasons and stuff, the less they have to latch on to and argue back with. And then disengagement. So that kind of, if this keeps happening, I'm going to disengage from this situation in some sort of way. So that there's just no getting past that. There's no response whatsoever. You're over here just being available for what you want to be, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of shutting that out in some sort of way.
Yeah,
Um,
this framework is really, really good. I think you've structured it out really well, to be able to sort of not just tell people, why, how exactly to do it in a step-by-step way, because for a lot of people, whether you're healthcare providers or anything, just saying the word no puts them in a bit of panic. They're like, oh, if I say no, this, they will just assume the worst, and sometimes they have experienced the worst.
Yeah.
So when that happens, even though people like to say no is a complete sentence, I've heard it so many times, but not many people are serious about it when they are actually doing it. Yes, in some instances it is a complete sentence, but it's up to you to make it happen. Which brings me to the next question. So a lot of people think that boundaries is just saying no all the time. Now, you and I know that that's not the truth. It's not just saying no to everything or declining everything. But when you sort of turn that around, so how do you do it in a way that sort of is coming more from a yes as opposed to no, but also gives the other person, so the person that you're setting the boundary with, an advantage? So how can this be done when you're not just being no, no, no to everything? You're leaning more towards the positive, and you're doing it in such a way that it becomes a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, well, this is a really important part of it, especially when, it's you're dealing with somebody that you want to have in your life, you want to move forward with, you want to find solutions for. You're not just telling them to get lost, and I like the fact that you are kind of focusing on, right, how do you focus more on the positive? And like I said, you can have that kind of boundary up, but it's more about what you're saying yes to over here rather
Yes.
than what you're saying no to. And I think that's it. The more you do focus on what you are available for, how you want things to be, and this is something that I work on clients with quite a lot. It's like, well, okay, you know what you don't want. That's fine. Everybody, we all know what you don't want, right? But what does that mean? What do you want? So, for example, if you're having issues in your relationship with your husband, or if it's a healthcare provider with your client, what do you want? What do you expect? Because you get to choose, especially if it's a situation where you get to set your personal boundaries. You get to choose what you want in terms of a relationship. What makes you feel safe within a relationship? What do you want? What do you want from your partner? What do you want from your client? What is the ideal situation? Okay, so you turn up in time for your appointments, you have your phone switched off, you do this, you only contact me during these hours, or you only expect a response during these hours, that kind of thing. So it is very much about what are you saying yes to? What is it you want, and communicating in terms of that. From, like in a relationship, rather than, like I said, it's not about finger pointing and blaming and all of that sort of stuff. It's about coming to somebody with who you truly are and what is okay with you. So
Absolutely.
this is what I need. This helps me to feel safe. When you do this, I really appreciate it. It's coming to somebody with solutions rather than problems. So, you know what? See, when you do this, it's amazing. I feel great when you do this. I really feel heard when you blah blah blah. And so that language around how you feel a lot of the time when it's a personal situation is really useful, because that's something that people can't argue with as well. If you state something as a fact, this is unfair, someone can say, no, it's not. But if you say, I feel this is unfair, they don't really have anywhere to go with that, because they can't tell you how they feel,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that very, very powerful and very insightful, definitely. Now, so this course that you have on boundaries, where can people sort of access it and find it? Is it just for your existing clients, or is it also for the new ones?
It'll be for everyone. So it's not solely a boundaries course at the moment. It forms a fairly large part of a bigger course. It's going to be an online self-paced course for people who want to kind of work on their own recovery from the chronic conditions that I've mentioned. So it has other elements to it as well, like around meeting your needs and dealing with overthinking and also boundaries and emotional suppression and all of that sort of stuff. So it is going to be available to the general public before the end of the year. And then what I might do is actually take the boundary section out of that because that's a wider thing that
Yes.
more people could really do with. So probably in the new year, I'll make that available as a standalone course as well.
Okay. Excellent. So yeah, and that can all be found on your website and your socials.
Yes, it can. So under the services section on my website, you find it all over my socials at the moment as well. There is a wait list at the moment that people can sign up to. So if you sign up to that, you'll get an email as soon as the course is ready to buy.
Right. Excellent. Well, yeah, all of that will be left in the description box, and it is, because we do have your social details from last time, so we'll just include that. But yeah, this was a very informative and insightful conversation as always, Susan. I learned so much from you, and I feel I can talk to you for hours and hours together. So yeah, and it's always a privilege and a pleasure having you. And I do remember in our the mutual group, the Child-Free Entrepreneur group, your live segment was on boundaries, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Don't know. I couldn't find it when I went there. I might have to go back and look at it again. But yeah.
It was. I've updated it slightly. So I had my 4 pillars of boundaries in that one, and I talked through them. So I've now updated it. I've added a 5th. So
all right, and that's the framework that you just mentioned.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, don't need to ask you that again. Anyway, so again, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, wisdom, and insights with us. For everyone else who's watching and listening, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay updated on more forthcoming videos. And to access Susan's course before the end of the year or next year, I'm going to leave all her details in the description box. So you can follow her on socials, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. And yeah, so we look forward to seeing what it's all about. And yeah, thank you very much again for coming and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. And
thank you for having me again.
And have a good holiday season.
You too.
Yeah, boundaries don't take holidays. I've heard that at many places. Boundaries don't take time off.
Yeah,
holidays,
exactly.
So, yeah, lovely. You can actually pause the recording now.